I am unashamed. What about you?
So, there's a lot of people that listen to the Unashamed podcast, just like at work and things like that. Truck drivers, I hear from a lot of those guys. But a lot of people watch Unashamed because you can get it on YouTube or all these different places. For those of you watching, you'll notice that the Unashamed podcast has taken a major leap forward today in the looks of the people here, because we have Missy and we have Lisa. And so we have brought beauty into the den of beast that normally are on the Unashamed podcast. So welcome to the ladies.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I think somebody said we need a ratings bump. Call the women.
Yeah, actually, Jason, it's just we get tired of looking at each other. Finally, we're like, you had the idea. Why don't we get Missy and Lisa on? I was like, hey, I am all for that. So Lisa and I are going
So boys, ask yourself one question. Has your father ever called you on the telephone and went to belly aching about anything? Just go back, reel back the time.
For clarification, you don't have a phone.
There you go. That's a good point. Now you're beginning to see, but as your father, it's a discipline them who disciplines us, and we respected them for it. So the discipline stage is over. But I never have called. Yeah.
Which the idea I had, as uncomfortable as I feel when my lovely wife joins us.
Really?
Well, because they did the same thing with Si. They heard all these stories, and because he's on the Duck Call Room podcast, and somebody said, well, let's get Christine on here, which was a bold move. And
Si's wife.
Yeah. Si's wife. And so basically she became, and she didn't see our podcast, but the same thing happened. She became like the truth detector.
A conduit of Silas Robertson.
So what they did and what happens here is Si tells a story. Well, then the drama builds, just like when I tell a story, the drama builds, because then they pan over to Christine, and she, Roman gladiator style, either gives it the thumbs up or the thumbs down. And most of the times, it was the thumbs down.
He'd tell a story and she would say what? Nope.
And some of it was subtle. They said, we were there over one night. They had this weird relationship with their friends. And Si said, we was eating a pot of spaghetti. And they kind of stopped, had the album playing, and they go over to Christine, and she went, tacos.
We talked about this the last time I was here. We're doing the same thing, talking about this exact same thing again. You don't need me here to talk about that.
Well, there's some bitterness that I'm trying to get out.
Oh.
I have to release.
Let your words words be few, Jace.
Well, my whole point is, and Si's point, we've banded together through this, which is great, is that don't miss the meaning of the story just because memories have faded.
Memories, okay.
And babe, look, I don't want to start an intervention here, but you're not remembering as well as you once did either.
That is true. I did, when I walked in a while ago, and you said you just told the Reed, the truck's stolen, all that drama that just happened. You told that on the last podcast. Well, when Reed was talking to me about it last night, because I needed some clarification on some things after you told me, I was kind of confused. So Reed cleared up a few things, and he said at the end, I can't wait to see how Dad embellishes this story on the podcast. That was Reed.
Well, all I want to know is, and you mentioned it before we started here, how many shots were fired, did you say?
Reed told me last night 22.
22 shots?
I said 7, I think.
Well, 7 from his gun.
And these shots were going total. From the perpetrators toward...
Not Reed, because they had already stolen his truck and stolen his gun.
This was aimed at law enforcement.
This was aimed at... So these 3 guys were on a spree. They had found out, Reed said something that he didn't know as a Ram truck owner. So this is information. He said, if your key is inside your vehicle and you've locked it with your other key and you don't know that your second key is inside, you can push there's a button on the handle. If you push it 3 times and hold down the 3rd time, your truck will unlock.
And they
knew that. And Reed said, I didn't even know that. And I'm the truck owner.
I certainly didn't know it either.
So they were
I did not share that part of the story because I didn't want to educate would-be criminals.
Well, why don't we educate the owners of these trucks?
Owners, yeah.
Yes, to not do this. And so Reed said, I just thought it was locked and I can't get in without, unless I unlock it with my key.
That is weird.
And so he said that they were in already a Ram truck. And so they were just going through trying to find Ram trucks. And they got Reed's, of course. So they were on their way to get more Ram trucks. There was 3 guys. So they were on their way to get a 3rd one when all of this started happening and the chase and all. So when the 3rd one, they went to do it, a guy came out and saw them, the owner of this truck, and said, hey, what are you doing? And that's when they started firing at that guy. A civilian.
That's the exact story I told.
Well, good. Awesome.
Thank you.
So then the chase was on. And
but that was dangerous for all involved.
Yes.
Very dangerous.
Well, that makes more sense. They found some flaw in the system with the truck, and so which led they're already bitter and no respect for law, other people, or God, and just went on a crime spree based on this little intel they had.
Yeah.
So I told Reed, there's just, when I told him, I said, it's the power of a praying parent when I pray protection over my children, because if Reed would have looked out the window at that right time or wrong time and seen that happening, Reed and his personality would have walked right out there and said the same thing the other guy did, like, hey, what do you think you're doing?
Yep.
And he could have been fired on. So just protecting him and protecting the other victim. He was not fatally injured.
We are looking at a collapse of law. It's lawlessness, Al. We are experiencing it. Never before have I seen it like this in these United States, ever.
It's very scary.
Yeah, and like we talked about in the last podcast, it's not, we still tend to think, well, we're in the South and, we're armed. And so, we don't have to worry about these things. But you look at that situation. There's now brazen people that will use your own armament against you.
Yeah.
Which is what happened there. So, it's now getting out of just, some city somewhere, whatever.
Defunding the police has taken on new meaning.
Yeah. Well, we talked about this in the last podcast. Without fear, this is what happens. And you see it on the evil side. And man, you take a fear out of the equation that you're worried about going to jail or whatever happening to you. Then, these are dangerous situations and dangerous times. There's no doubt.
And
so, Missy, did you?
Well, just one more point I want to make. And I know we try to stay away from controversial things, on here.
Phil doesn't.
Well,
No,
I just, really. It angered me because Reed works really hard. He works really hard for and he's living his dream. He loves what he does and he works really hard at it. And when the cops brought him to the scene where they finally caught these guys a few miles away when they were putting him in the back of their patrol cars, Reed got out to go get his truck that was there on the side of the road. And these guys started yelling terrible racial curse words, calling him things because he was white and entitled to be able to have that truck.
I shared that.
And I just
exactly the way you did.
Just made me so mad. Like he works so hard for what he has and to take care of his family. And Reed said later, I wanted to say, oh, I'm at least working for this truck. You're stealing it, Yeah. But he didn't say that at the time. He was just, his adrenaline was pumping. It said just infuriated him,
But you remember because us as parents, I remember when because he ventured out, he wasn't sure that he could do this. This was not something like he studied for with this real estate. He crash coursed it, and I remember when he bought that truck, he was so proud. He was like, well, this is what hard work gets you. he was proud of that moment, and then to turn it on its head in that situation, it does make you angry.
Mm-hmm.
But that shows you something though, and Dad's right. There is a component, a societal, cultural, even political side to this thing, because there's one thing you go and steal from somebody, but what you just described, Missy, the disrespect of just a victim, but that they've heard that. I mean, that's been put into them.
And they were young. They weren't old enough really to be taught this. They've heard it for their entire lives to already be thinking this way and feel that entitlement. Way younger than Reed, you know. So.
Well, and what I didn't share, but now you made me think about it, is, I remember the first time, Reed kept telling me about this partner that was kind of his mentor and that helped him and he worked for. And so when we were visiting up there, he said, I want you to, meet this guy. I guess it was a couple years they've been working together. Well, when I met him, he never told me that he was an African-American, and I never asked. Yeah. But I just thought about that when they were hailing this racist remarks to him. I mean, they had no idea that his partner is a black man and one of his best friends.
And they love each other. They share everything. They are partners 50-50 in everything they do in business.
I didn't even know that.
And they support each other. Yes.
Yeah.
And
but I mean, that's what burns you up.
Friendship.
It's like that's where we always go in any. I mean, here's a guy, in handcuffs that just stole your truck and accusing you of being a racist, and he couldn't be more wrong in every aspect of what he's doing with his life and his speech, what he thinks, and it just shows you it reminds me of that verse that says there's, a great delusion that's sent where people will believe the lie. I mean,
spiritual warfare. It's going on.
I think it's a generational curse too, because this has not been going on for just their generation. They have lived this. Their parents were probably this way. Their grandparents could have possibly been this way. So this is like a generational curse, and they're just carrying on what they know. Yeah. So they haven't ever been taught any different. Mm-hmm. So whenever you're not taught differently, then you just do what your folks did or what your grandparents did. And so this is just something that needs to be, this curse needs to be exercised by the Lord, in their life in order to do something different.
I'll tell you one thing.
They need to meet Jesus.
It makes this verse come, Hebrews 12, verse 14, make every effort to live in peace with all men and to be holy. Without holiness, no one will see God. See that no one misses the grace of God, and no bitter root grows and causes trouble and defile many. Boy, what advice. These young bucks
and a lot of times it comes from a lack of having family too. And like Lisa said, it can be a curse either way. Sometimes if you just go by, what's going down on the street, you just react that way. Yeah. We had Dr. Carson on him, and Ben Carson. I remember him talking about the human brain and how, when the frontal lobe is engaged, that's where we think, that's where we reason, all that happens. But he said the difference between a human brain and an animal brain is they react. So this is another part of the brain. And when it's just reaction, then you don't think anything through. You'll do anything. And he said that's why people behave literally like animals. They attack. They don't care. We talked about it on the last podcast. People just coming up and hitting women, on the older people on the street. I mean, you watch that and you're like, what world do we live in? But it's all reaction. They're just reacting the way that they want to. They're bitter, they're angry, they're whatever. And that's what you're seeing more and more. And it's like Dad said, it's hard times is what it is. Let's take a break. One of my favorite passages, Jase, is Job 31, because Job is kind of defending his character there. And he starts out by saying, I made a covenant with my eyes not to look lustfully at a woman. And I just love the concept there. And it shows you that lust has been a problem going back, because Job is a very ancient man that we read about in the Bible. But now it's even worse because of the internet, because of pornography and this, hundreds of billions of dollar industry that really is just putting out terrible things. And so it's made it tougher for sure on people now. And so we need help to be able to deal with that because porn is so bad. So we got a great group called Covenant Eyes, I guess based on that concept from Job 31. They've helped over 1.5 million people toward a porn-free life. They've been around for about 22 years. A great product, and I heard about them way back at the very beginning. It's helped a lot of people that I know. So right now, if you want to give these guys a try, if it's something you're struggling with, we really encourage you to check them out. If you go to CoveEyes, CoveEyes.com/Phil, that's CoveEyes.com/Phil, they're going to let you try this product for 30 days for free. It's a free 30-day trial if you sign up today with the promo code Phil. So you have nothing to lose, but a lot to gain. Go to CoveEyes, CoveEyes.com/Phil.
Their problem is they don't know what their problem is.
Well, I also noticed too that in Hebrews 12 it talked a lot about discipline and that he disciplines those he loves. So obviously these boys that did this have not been disciplined, and it could be a breakdown of the family. We don't really know anything about their personal situation, but when I was reading chapter 12, kind of preparing for possibly some of this talk, I thought I am in a situation, Jase and I, still with this baby. We still have the baby, and he's 6 months old. I think I'm being disciplined.
Well, I hadn't heard this. This may be good therapy.
I was reading. I was like, maybe he's disciplining me, by keeping this child in our home and having us be the caregivers of someone that we never knew was going to be existing or part of our lives.
Someone calls you and says, "Do you, here's my baby. He's yours now."
Mm-hmm.
I'm like,
yeah.
It could.
Well, I've noticed that it's been physically demanding on me.
Very, but it's humbling. It's just one of the emotions that I've had in the last 6 months. Very humbled, because I think, well, here we are about to be empty nesters. Mia just started college this week, and I was looking forward to this time. I was looking forward to the kind of the freedom, flexibility. Look at me. I can kind of do what I want again. I don't have any kids in the house, and I got a little spanked. I think on that. So I think it's been
Jase, you've
humbling.
been a pretty good hand. You've said, well,
because I'm not doing much work,
That's true.
So, yeah, she's doing the brunt of. I have tried. She brought it to my attention that I might need to help out a little bit, which I hadn't heard that since the last time we had little kids. So I'd obviously forgotten. 20 years goes by. So, she kind of
could be.
She gave
God
me a
just
speech.
God saying to us all, when these things happen, by the way, I want this one. Take care of him. Raise him in discipline.
I mean, that I told Missy. Yeah, I shared even with her. I have a. I don't know. I don't know how to say that. I mean, I've been pretty positive here lately, and because I read Hebrews 12, and when I distinguished that there are some things that weight you down, that I think are blessings from God that we don't handle right, you allow that to weigh you down, and so then I used that based on Hebrews 12:1, because this has nothing to do about sin maybe somebody else's sin, but here's an opportunity and here's a blessing, because when you see this little baby on a daily basis, you appreciate life. Mm-hmm. It's just, you can't help, in my opinion,
especially because we're older now. Like, I didn't appreciate it as much in my 20s because it was a lot of work, and this is just something that's supposed to happen. But when something unexpected happens, I think with this baby, it's almost like every moment, every day has a special meaning.
Yeah, you appreciate it more. I'm the same way. I'm like,
you're entertaining. Be careful. We're going to get into it next week or two. Be careful to entertain strangers. By so doing, some have entertained angels without knowing it. Boy, just a baby that comes out of nowhere, you're like, whoa, here.
We know where he came from.
That would be a exact fulfillment of Hebrews 13 when we get there.
When we get there.
We're getting there.
No, I love that part about when we talked about that, because Jason and I talked about the things that weigh you down and the sin, the way that the Hebrew writer differentiated those two. I've never thought about that. Yeah. But in context, I always took those to be negative things, that those were just burdens, or something that was weighing you down, which I guess it could be depending on your perspective. But this baby weighs me down in the fact that I was not prepared. I'm older, it's taking a toll on me, but he's nothing but a blessing.
It's all positive.
It's all positive. Yeah. It's just the weight of that blessing and the responsibility that it is put upon us unexpectedly. That is weight. And
this is a baby boy, not a baby girl.
Yeah, baby boy.
Baby boy, yes.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Missy. We did talk about it on the podcast, on previous podcasts, that there are positives to discipline. It's not just about punishment, because we think about, trying to get in shape physically or different ways we, discipline ourselves or not eat too much food or all the different things. But he said, endure hardship as discipline. And that's why God does put those obstacles, I'm convinced, or not even obstacles, weights and burdens and things that we have to wrestle with.
Which can be a blessing.
The thing is, what do you learn coming out? What do you learn coming out of it? Because you guys don't know. It's still a lot of questions in the future, but you're still walking and trusting that this baby is right where he needs to be under your protection.
I don't even think it's about what we learn.
It's a blessing for the child, no doubt about that.
I don't see it as what am I supposed to get out of it? This has nothing to do with me. I feel like this is all about him. I don't know that for sure, but right now that's what we're concentrating on, is how can we make his life better, because he obviously has a purpose. Just being conceived, created, brought into this earthly world with everything against him. From the moment of conception,
it's fortunate
the odds were against him.
She chose to give him life, his mother.
Well, exactly. Yeah. So what I was telling Missy, though, I was like, it's encouraged me, because when I read, it's some things that I viewed, and, my new favorite word is this Christianese, which is kind of a sarcastic word for like church
Christian
speak.
Language.
Yeah, church speak, it's like what so it's
Christianese. I hadn't heard that. That's pretty good.
We just heard that.
A buddy of ours, his wife actually, she's like, it just makes me so upset when we're just saying all this Christianese stuff just to be cool, Like, for example, it's like, well, in this season of your life, what is God trying to say? They're not really wondering what God's really trying to say. It just sounds cool to say, this is a season, a new season of your life, So that was that was the point. But one of the Christianese sayings is that when people do something, they'll say, if just one person is touched by this, then it's worth it. I've heard that so many times to where I almost roll my eyes, which I shouldn't. I'm saying I shouldn't. But when I hear somebody say that, but what it's done, it's actually made me think about when Jesus was getting the accusation in Luke 15 with eating with the tax collectors and sinners. And basically his first story was if one person is reached, it's worth it. So it kind of convicted me in that moment, because I told Missy, I said, I wake up every morning, I look at this boy, and it's made me realize the importance of each individual person. In the subtleties that I didn't appreciate when my own kids were that age, I'm like Missy, I notice every little subtlety about that boy. It's like I notice everything that he does different. That I'm like, because now I told Missy the other day, so I'm looking at him, he's in his little seat, and I thought, he's having a poop right now. And it wasn't because I smelled it. His facial reaction, I said, are you pooping right now? His eyes were going back and forth. He's kind of staring at the floor. It's like he doesn't want me to notice it. I don't notice because you're 14 feet away and you're covered up. But I could tell by the look. And so when Missy came in, I said, I think he pooped. But she quickly looked at him and was like, no, I don't.
And I just changed a poop of like an
said,
hour before.
No, he just did.
Like,
I thought, man, I could have sworn he was pooping. Well, about 10 minutes later, she came down. She went, oh, my goodness, were you right? But he was sitting in the chair, and I don't remember what you said, but it was like he had, when you're sitting and you poop, and it's
There's nowhere for it to go but straight up the back.
Yeah.
When you're sitting there.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I knew it from the facial reaction.
So how long have y'all had this child?
6 months.
6 months.
But that's my point is that you notice these little things and you're appreciating them, you're appreciating life, and you are
Going
thinking,
forward, so what's the plan for going forward?
in the back of your mind, you're realizing that I believe God has a special purpose for this. Yeah. Now, I know he has a special purpose for everybody, and it goes off the rail, but I'm involved in this, and I believe this, and I'm thinking about that Luke 15, and we got a little bitty lamb out here in this is the 99. The guy lost a sheep, and the sheep was pregnant, and, go with me here. And now we have the one, so you were out looking for the lost sheep, and then all of a sudden you found that it gave birth, and you took the little one in.
Yeah.
So going forward, what's the plan?
Hang on, miss. Let's take a break.
So going forward, and you say, like, what's the plan? That's one of the hardest parts for me because we don't know.
Well, it is the hardest part. This is literally one day at a time. Now, you tell people that, football season's coming up. You're like, hey, we got to take one play at a time and all that. And everybody knows that, but nobody really does because you want to think ahead, which has caused some anxiety.
Much.
Every time I go ahead, I start experiencing anxiety.
Well, both y'all have done a very good deed.
Well, that's why I would put this which is where you started, Missy, in a hardship situation, is because that is the hardship, not knowing. I mean, you guys have reacted, and it's really interesting to hear Jay say that, because I was thinking about, it's kind of what happens because you guys are the same age, roughly as Lisa and I, where you're having your grandkids now. And I noticed way more with my grandkids than I did my kids because I was busy working and trying to make sure we had a roof over our head and, discipline and all this stuff. But now the nuances, as you're older, you see things through different eyes. And so it's kind of interesting because you guys are brand new grandparents and yet you're brand new parents at the same time. So I think you're experiencing some of all of that,
Well, and I will say this too. I'm gonna brag on Brighton. They don't listen to the podcast. I don't think so. I don't think she'll hear this.
What's wrong with them, man?
I don't know, but
Are they better?
I hope not. I don't think so.
Maybe they hear certain people enough.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But I had been in Nashville, moved Mia in all day long at her college dorm, and literally I left the college at 6:35, and I called Reed, and I was like, can I make it before Maris goes to bed? I got to see Maris one more time because I'm leaving to go home tomorrow. And he was like, yeah, we're here. So I literally got there at 6:55, and Maris goes to bed at 7. So I had 5 minutes where I just walked in. She saw me. She had this big grin on her face. She started crawling right towards me, and I pick her up, and then it's bedtime, basically. And so she reached for her mama and was kind of fussy, like, I'm ready to go to bed. And so Brighton said, I'll be right back. And there was no one in the house, and except me and Brighton and Maris. Reed had gone to do an errand. And I could hear Brighton's bedtime routine. And Maris she was 8 months old. So I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I was right there next door in the living room, and she was reading her a story, and Maris is kind of babbling, and then she started singing some of the songs that I sang to Reed. She's singing those to Maris, and then she's praying over Maris out loud as she puts her in the crib. And Maris is babbling and just kind of talking, da.
At what point did you start getting
I was just sitting there in the living room, just tears. Like, this is the ultimate parent moment, me as a parent moment. And that wasn't even Reed. That's Reed's wife who saw knew what we did. And Reed had told her and started that. And, Maris is little. So they've been doing this since the first week they brought her home and put her in the crib. So I don't really know my point of this other than I want to just brag about them and what they're doing as parents for our babies.
What the nuclear family is all about.
Babe, there's no crying on the podcast.
Oh.
I don't know if I can handle it.
Okay.
All right, Missy. Missy, so my encouragement to you today is this. In 12:11, it says, no discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Yes. Later on, however, it produces harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. But this is what I love. Verse 12 is this. Therefore, strengthen your feeble arms and your weak knees. Make level paths for your feet, so that the lame may not be disabled, but rather healed. To me, this is saying that's exactly what you're making this path so that his mother can come back at some time and be healed and they can be a family. But that's what you're doing. I mean, it's a job that God gave you, but that's what you're doing. You're making this path straight. You're making this path where all she has to do is to be the person that she needs to be the Christian that she needs to be, come back in, and she can raise her child to be and she can be righteous, before God. Mm-hmm. And so to me, that's what, whenever I read that, that's what I think about for your situation. Of course, it's painful right now, but righteousness and peace come after it.
Thank you. That is encouraging.
Yeah, you trust the process. No, I'll confess. One time I got a little misty-eyed as I went up there and Missy made this, I don't know what they're called in the women's world, but she put a string, she put this string up. I mean, I don't even know who thinks of this kind of stuff. Above his bed, and she has all these pictures, and it's like, I mean, who knew that many pictures have been taken throughout the process?
I had to take a lot out. There was a lot more for sure.
But when he looks at all the it's his mom and it's us and all the people that are keep him and different moments. But then it was like, I don't know. It just kind of gave me a moment there because it then put all the 6 months into when you look back at like how you've gotten to this point. But they were all positive things. But just seeing the way, I mean, that boy, he loves looking at those pictures. And I'm like, does he know something here? Why? I don't know. Just in that moment,
he knows what love is like.
Yeah, it made me get kind of teary-eyed.
There's so many people that are a part of his life. It's not just me and Jase. I don't want to give the impression. I mean, we do have the brunt of the work and all of the responsibility, but we have a lot of people who help us, and they spend a lot of time with him. And so I just wanted to honor all of those people, but also as he wakes up from his naps or in the mornings before we come get him, I want him to be able to see all those people every day and just kind of put that subconsciously basically into his life and into his memory, because I don't know what he's, again, we don't know what the future holds. We could lose him tomorrow to another situation, or we could have him for quite a long more time. Yeah. We just do not know. So I think when we talked about doing things purposefully and looking at it at a different perspective, this is a whole different perspective than raising our own children. And so we're trying to just handle it the best way we can. We're not making all the right decisions, but
let's take another break. Well, Missy, Lisa and I do a lot of pro-life stuff. And in fact, we're shooting a video later today for a group called Susan B. Anthony, which is one of the largest lobbyist groups for families and for especially babies in the pro-life movement. But one of the things we're noticing in kind of this now, what is now a post-Roe culture, since the Supreme Court has said, look, it's back to the states. That means people in states that women that can't have abortion can't have access and used to. That means you're going to have more babies. And so the pro-life movement is not just about saving babies, but then somebody has to step in that gap.
Yes, they do.
To foster, to adopt, to do just what you guys are doing. So I'm so glad that you're talking about that today, because our audience is large, and there's going to be people who have that heart. And so what you're describing is, if you're not maybe the foster parent or the adoptive parent, but you may be the support system person.
Mm-hmm.
You're friends with those people, so you're willing to give that family a break, or you're willing to help out in whatever way is needed. So we all have to step up now, because we've had a great victory by coming back to states, but that means we're going to have to work hard. I mean, our work is just now beginning in the pro-life movement, because we're going to have a lot more babies, praise the Lord, that they're not being killed.
Well, and I go back again to, I received multiple texts for the first 4 to 5 months of his life at people asking, can we adopt him? And he's just not available to be adopted at the moment. And so, but it showed me how many families want a baby that cannot have them. And so the need for these lives to be saved goes way beyond just the political aspect of pro-life. It's actually helping other women. Women are, they're created and formed for a purpose, and inside of each of us women, God has placed this caring and this motherly part of us. It's an instinct. And whether or not we train ourselves to get out of it or train ourselves to be better at it, it's there. It's in our DNA. And so for some women who are not able to have children, they still want them. There's still something in their life that they want those children. And so, I mean, I don't know, babe, how many families do you think we've heard from in 6 months?
I mean,
I would say between 20 and 30. That's the ones that we know. I'm sure there's way others out there that don't know how to get a hold of us to let us know they would like a baby too, but that's just the ones who've actually made contact with us. That's a lot. And babies, there are a lot of homes out there that would love to have babies. So there's not going to be a big need once these babies are being born. They're going to have loving homes.
Yep. And that's part of what we're trying to do, is help cut red tape. I mean, state governments have got to be ready for this, which is what's going to happen and is happening around the country. Jase, it's interesting. You were describing that about the.
Al, it's not a governmental fix. It's a spiritual fix, which they've proven.
Yes.
It's a spiritual fix.
Well, and we're the body of Christ, so we're supposed to be his hands and feet and mouthpiece on earth. And so it's our responsibility as being members of the kingdom of God to try to look out for everybody as much as we can. So I think it's our job.
Well,
so
I think
Jase,
it's good we're talking about this too on the Unashamed podcast, because we need more people who are doing this to speak out about it and not be scared to talk about it. Yes, I am pro-life. I'm not just pro-birth. I'm pro-life. And I think we're kind of proving that, in one of the hardest ways possible. So,
and it's based on your experiences. I mean, in mine and Lisa's case, I mean, what kind of got us into this whole discussion was because, Lisa had an abortion as a teenager and was willing to talk about it, and how God forgave her, but that how, there's been a hole in her heart, for all these years. And so that allows us to try to hopefully help young women make better decisions before they get to this point. But sin is sin. It's going to happen. But the baby is not sin. A baby is a celebration. There should be every celebration, which is kind of what you say, right?
Yeah, a blessing. Every child, no matter how they came into this world, should be, we should celebrate them.
Yes.
I mean,
that's what I said. That's been the biggest
thing.
That's been the biggest encouragement to me. I mean, look, yesterday I noticed, listen to what these fools did in the world. We should do something about this. So they said, well, babies, they need to eat broccoli. So they mixed it with apples. They put broccoli and apples and mixed it all up. It looked like green something.
Applesauce.
It looked like green applesauce. I thought, it just made me mad. And look, I mean, babe, that I don't know. They're trying to trick them or something. So and then Missy bought it because she wants to see what he thinks of broccoli. I mean, look, she put that little bit in his mouth because this was just riveting to watch because I wanted to see. Now here's this boy. He don't know what this is. They just whatever he don't realize. Oh, somebody stuck some broccoli in an apple and think I'm gonna eat this thing. No, he has no idea. He's trusting the parent 100%. She stuck that in his mouth, and it was like 1001, 1002, and I thought, well, they pulled it off, and then the look on his face was sheer terror, and he gagged about 3 times, which was funny. And I thought, nope. Okay, baby food maker, you had a good idea, but this kid said no.
And then I fed him about half of it, and then fed him.
I
some
know,
more
but he
last
gagged every time.
Well.
It was. I couldn't watch it after a while because it was watching some weird.
Leave it to
porn.
Jace. He'd be feeding him ice cream, and the boy would grow up on mac and cheese and nothing good for
pretty
him.
much like
so.
Jace did, chips and white powdered
Look
donuts.
how I turned out.
Exactly. Let's take another break.
I mean, outside of
Missy,
the mayonnaise sandwiches that I will not even
I'm
pronounce
trying to
or
remember
eat.
back when y'all were like babies and to figure out what you were eating. But
No,
for
Phil,
the life of me,
you're not going to be able to remember because
I can't remember.
You weren't around.
Yeah.
This is every man for himself. I'll just go ahead and tell you that. Al cooked most of our meals, and it was usually macaroni and cheese and cinnamon toast.
Yeah.
That was
that was
the
my go-to. And then every once in a while, when we were really going to do the dog, we would do Vienna sausage. That's when things were really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Missy, I just thank you, Jace, for reminding me of something. So, a few podcasts back, he told about when he ate a whole bag of white powdered donuts in one sitting. And then, but on the podcast, he blamed you for him eating the whole bag of white powdered donuts because you bought them.
I have not discussed this with her, but she's hearing that for the first time.
Does this even warrant discussion?
Did you unprovoked buy me about 3 weeks ago a bag of white powdered donuts?
You ate that whole thing at one time?
I did.
One sitting.
And that somehow this is my fault. Okay.
No,
Yeah,
I didn't
he
say it was your
blamed you.
fault. I just said you bought it.
Okay.
And you're not a heavy man. So I'm looking at your tummy.
But you
and
could get that way.
that went on through.
Boy, Dad, only Dad can just phrase something just right.
I'm trying to
make me
remember
laugh.
if it ever happened to look at a bag of donuts and eat them all. I've never tried that.
I didn't try it. I couldn't stop. I was hungry,
Yeah.
and I ate. I do the same thing with potato chips, but she keeps buying them. And
I'm sorry.
That's called love.
That's about what I thought you would like.
I do like them. I just was pointing out that at some
You
point
can't control yourself.
I'm probably
going
gonna have to quit doing that at some point.
Yeah, that's a little much, AJ.
The reason I thought about it is because he was describing about the baby food. It was like, these people, why would they make it? And then, Missy, why would you buy it? I mean, it's like Jace blamed everybody from top to bottom on why this kid's
I just
eating
think
broccoli
it's.
now.
I mean, look, the baby is 6 months, and you're gonna go with broccoli. I mean, that's just almost mean. But she's looking for the overall health. I get it, but it was
today we're trying beets and kale and throw in
By
a
the
few
way, how did
fruits.
y'all-
So it's
Seriously?
just what you do.
How did you determine, because in the last 6 months they've been hollering about baby formulas gone. So how did y'all work that out? I mean, were the shelves for baby food empty like they were saying?
Yes,
But Missy,
So
this
what was
woman
the
right here.
recommendation to correct that?
I'm going to give credit to the Almighty God because Missy had an
Absolutely.
idea that she got from Brighton
Mm-hmm.
that they had a. Can we talk about that?
What do you mean?
Well, I don't want everybody going to try and buy.
Well, they can't. They can't because
Well,
they.
you tell the story.
Well, we just found Brighton found a company online. So what she did, it was an organic company, and she started supplementing with Maris because Maris wasn't getting what she needed from Brighton, and so Brighton had to start looking. And she bought some over-the-counter stuff, and then saw that it was hard to find, and found a company online that just you order it. And it's like a subscription service, and they just send you so many cans per month. And she signed up for it. And so when I was trying to figure out what was going on, because she's 2 months ahead of me, or Maris is 2 months ahead of the baby. So she was like, you should try this. And so I tried it, ordered like one box, thinking, I don't know how long we're going to have the baby. And then she said, oh, it's a good thing you signed up for that subscription service because they're not taking any more customers. They're cut off everyone because they can't make enough. Yeah. And so I got right on the tail end of that company. And I think that was just the grace of God taking
run out
care
of
of
baby food. I would think
Phil,
that would be a major.
As a responsible parent, I feel responsible for this boy. So I thought I need to do some research because what if we run out of formula? I mean, obviously, when you're fostering a baby,
you were looking at the news media.
Breastfeeding is not a possibility, and so I'm like, the most mad I've ever gotten at the federal government is when I went and researched why there is a baby formula shortage.
That's what I've been wondering.
Oh, I went down the rabbit hole, and because the problem was not, there was unfortunately a couple babies had died, and they didn't know why, and they thought it could have been the baby formula.
One company.
So they shut down the plant, and so. But here was the problem I had with all that: the government took so long. So it's like 3 months we're going to shut down this plant. But look, it's 3 months before they even get on there and check it out. I'm like, wait a minute here. You can't shut down a company. You should be on a plane within 3 hours down there and see. But so at every turn, the reason I got so angry is that the red tape that it was taking them to look into that literally took months.
Well, to y'all's credit, for y'all to research it enough to find a way to keep a baby, a young child, months old, month or two old. When y'all first got the child, how old was he?
Well, he was 3 days old, but I took him to the pediatrician at 5 days old. She sent me home with the formula, like for a few days to get us going. Ooh. The next day, they called me and said, throw out all that formula. I was like, do what? They said, well, we have a different brand. Come by the office. We'll give you 2 or 3 days worth until you can find some more. So during that time is when we started panicking, like we're not going to be able to find.
So I was researching.
We're living in some crazy times.
After all those months of delays and all, then they're like, well, we don't know if it caused it or not. So it was all just jumping through hoops for a year.
No, Jace, I got news for you. It's even worse. I'll give you another reason to be mad at the government about it. The reason why there's not more baby formula factories
That's what I'm trying
is
to figure
because
out.
the government has killed competition by subsidizing this one handful of companies, and so nobody can compete with them because the government's the biggest customer. Yeah. And so they have basically made a monopoly out of this one company. I think there's only 4 that even make it in the U.S.
All this talk about coming from Australia and England with the baby food, is there baby food available out there?
Yes, because you know what I did? I went on my Amazon account. At one time I showed Jace this, and if you tried to order the other brand that was supposed to be okay, you can't get it. It's not available. Everything on there was sold out. But if you go down to the very bottom of your screen and you switched from your country, USA, if you switched it to Canada, you can get it. It'll cost you $45 in shipping, but you can get it.
But wouldn't that technically be lying?
And I thought, whoa, if I didn't have this subscription service and I didn't know how to do that, there are ways you can get it. And I told Jason, this is what's making me really mad right now because America can't get it, but Canada can.
Something about the flow of the money just didn't hit right. It's just greed on somebody's part.
Yes.
Well, like I said, it was a lot of bad setup, and then you had this disaster. And you're right. I mean, Jase is right. Your parents, I mean, like your babies will live or die depending on how you solve this solution. You know, come up with
is
this
the
solution.
baby formula on the shelves of American?
Well, yeah, they got it back.
Right.
It's not fully stocked. No, I just I looked at the store yesterday.
It is back from just being nothing. I mean, because they opened that plant back up.
Well, I'm hoping that someone will cut some red tape and they'll allow some competition where other people can make this baby for me. I mean, it's kind of like the whole thing, Dad, with the China and all that. I mean, you're starting to see you better have some stuff you make here for your people, because if you're dependent on the Chinese or some other player, the Ukrainians, I mean, now you can't get fertilizer. I mean, it's just like you cannot be so dependent on other places. That's the problem with the whole global economy deal. Mm-hmm. You got to be able to make stuff here. That's just the way
I think when I listened to the explanations from the White House press room, there was 2 different reasons given when asked. One reason from the same girl, 2 different times, she said, well, we weren't aware of this until just recently. And then another time was like, we've been on this since day one.
No.
And I was like, okay, first of all, which one is it? Because the news didn't even start covering it until May. And we had we got the baby in mid-February, and it happened 5 days later. So the media was not even covering this for 3 months from the time that we found out. So then the administration would not even discuss it, talk about it, act like it's not a big deal. And then they said, oh, we've been on this since day one. And I thought back to whenever, Lisa, you and I, we did a book, and we had a publisher or an assistant was supposed to be taking care of us, and she didn't do a very good job. And I told Chase this. I said, this reminds me of a situation to where after it was over, I got a phone call and they said, we understand that you're not happy with this assistant that we had kind of help you with this, and we want to hear what was going on. And so I explained all the problems we had. And at the very end, this person said, well, if it's any consolation, she did the very best she could. And I said, then she's in the wrong business. And that's what I thought when they were standing there at the podium saying, we've been on this since day one. I thought, then you're in the wrong business and you need to be replaced by somebody who can actually do the job.
You know what the moral of that is? Don't mess with my woman.
Don't mess with her.
Most moms, they're mama bears.
We're out of time, but we're going to carry this. Missy's done got us riled up, so we got to carry that over into overtime. See what else we can get her mad about. So
we'll see. She's not mad at me. I'm happy.
Jase. Yeah, I'm hoping it's Jase.
BlazeTV.com/unashamed if you want to come hear another Missy rant. Come on.
Oh gosh.
Thanks for listening to the Unashamed podcast. Help us out by rating us on iTunes. And don't miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube, and be sure to click that little bell to get notified about new episodes. And for even more content that you won't get anywhere else, subscribe to Blaze TV at blazetv.com/unashamed.